Hello and welcome to English for You. I'm Seb.
I'm Nikki.
And we are talking about one of history's great figures today, one of history's great people. Who are we talking about today?
Gandhi.
Gandhi, exactly. Now, Gandhi is a name that I'm sure we've all heard, and I'm sure we recognize him with his white robes and his round glasses and his short hair. He's a very famous person from India. And he was very famous for one way of thinking, wasn't he, Nikki?
Yeah, he really likes the thinking of non-violence. He does not approve any kinds of violence.
Right. He wanted people to be peaceful and make change through protests, through different activities, but not through fighting. And so recently, people have been trying to promote this idea a lot. Gandhi's birthday is actually the International Day of Non-Violence. But also,
October 2nd.
It is October 2nd. And actually, we're filming this now just a short time before the International Day of Peace, which is another day where peace is very important, obviously. It's in the name. This is a day where they can't have any fighting. There is a international ceasefire, which means people can't shoot guns on this day, or they shouldn't shoot guns on this day.
It's also another word of non-violence. And it's on September 21st.
Exactly. So autumn or fall is really a time, it seems, for thinking about how we can make changes in peaceful ways. And so in the spirit of that, let's talk more about the amazing life and ideas of Gandhi.
Reading.
The spirit of Gandhi lives on through the International Day of Nonviolence. To truly understand the work of Mohandas Gandhi, you must first imagine this. Your country has been ruled by foreigners for many years, and your people are treated badly and unfairly. If you try to speak up, you risk being thrown in jail. That's what it was like in India while Britain was ruling it from 1858 to 1947. Gandhi was an Indian lawyer who became famous for promoting non-violent protests against the British in India. The British did many terrible things to the native Indians. One example was to stop Indians from producing their own salt. Instead, they had to buy salt from the British, which included paying a lot of tax. In 1930, Gandhi led a group of protesters in a non-violent protest. They walked 385 kilometers to an area on the coast. There, they began making their own salt from seawater. Soon, people all across India began protesting too.
Okay, so we begin with the introduction to our article. To truly understand the work of Mohandas Gandhi, you must first imagine this. Okay, so to truly understand the work, in order to understand the work, the ideas, the legacy of Gandhi, you must first think about this. We don't know what this is yet. That's going to be in the next sentence.
It is, your country has been ruled by foreigners for many years, and your people are treated badly and unfairly. 那今天的课文呢，就是要跟我们说圣雄甘地的故事。但是在真正了解他所做的事情之前，我们要先假装自己是生活在那个时代的印度人。那国家被英国人给统治，而且都受到很不公平的对待。So they were being treated badly and unfairly.Unfairly 指的就是是 fair 的公平的相反，那前面这个 prefix un 是否定的意思，就会变成了不公平的。
Right. When the British were in charge of India, that was a very dark time for most Indian people because they didn't have control of their country, and the people from the UK were very cruel to them, very mean to them. They took a lot of their money and a lot of their resources, and they treated them very badly. So that's what was happening in India at the beginning. The article tells us a little bit more about what British India was like. It says, if you try to speak up, you risk being thrown in jail. Okay, so we have a conditional clause there, if you try to speak up. So when someone tries to change anything, they could be arrested and thrown in jail. Thrown in jail for just speaking up, right, Nikki?
Yeah. 那 speak up 指的就是大胆的说出来你的意见，在这边的意思呢，就是说，如果当时你到处就是跟人家说，这英国政府太夸张了吧，那这样你就会被抓去关，是一件非常白色恐怖的事情。
Right. I have to say, I think the British in India is one of the great shames or the very dark parts of the UK's past. So it's important we learn about it. We also learned the word risk in that sentence. So risk basically means when you risk something bad, you do something that might make that bad thing happen. Okay, so as a noun, risk actually means chance, normally the chance of something bad happening. So we could talk about the risk of certain side effects, like if you take some medicine, it could make you sick, that's a risk. The risk of death, that is, if, say you do a dangerous activity, you could hurt yourself and die, that is a risk. Or the risk of unemployment, the risk of losing your job. Now, normally when someone risks one of these things, they risk death or they risk unemployment, they do an action that could cause these things to happen. For example, if I know that I would go to jail if I got caught robbing a bank, but I rob a bank anyway, then I risk going to jail because I could get caught and I could go to jail. Here's another example. People who smoke cigarettes risk getting very sick one day. Okay, so we can also use risk as an adjective, risky, and that also has the same meaning. It's just in an adjective form, so we could talk about risky behavior, such as smoking cigarettes, or risky actions. Gambling is a risky pastime.
Risk 是动词，意思就是冒着一个怎么样的风险。那就是说，你做了一件事情，可能会有负面或者是不乐见的结果。像是现在，疫情很严重的时候，3级警戒的时候，如果你偷偷在家开趴，你 have a party at home， 那5人以上的群聚，then you risk getting fined， 意思就是说你没抓到，对你没有被抓到的话是没事，可是如果被抓到的话，你就要被罚款了。
You also risk getting a lot of people sick, don't you?
Yeah. 那抽烟的人呢，都冒着有一天可能会生病的风险。It's true. Chances are you probably get cancer.
Exactly. So we're not talking about risking getting cancer or risking getting a fine. We're risking getting thrown in jail. Now, exactly. So jail is a place where criminals go as punishment for their crimes. It's very similar to another word you might already know, prison. However, jails are normally smaller. So while prisons are very big, jails are small. For example, we could talk about a maximum security prison, a very big prison with lots of bad criminals, or a state prison, which is a guoli kind of prison. So you'll see that we use this word a lot as part of a phrase, to throw someone in jail, 把关进监狱. Now, obviously, we don't mean that we're actually throwing someone through the air. We're not lifting them up. We mean that we are sending them to prison or sending them to jail. Okay, so here's an example sentence for jail. The judge found Hamish guilty and sent him to jail. And we could also use prison there. The judge found Hamish guilty and sent him to prison.
Jail 指的就是监狱，那我们也可以用 prison 来表示一样的东西。那如果今天有一个人正在坐牢、在服刑的话呢，我们可以说he's in prison, in jail, or we can say he's behind bars， 因为他就是在那个一根一根的铁栏杆后面，也就是监狱。那这些坐牢的人呢，这些囚犯，我们就可以称之为 prisoner 或者是 inmate。
Exactly. So the article says that's what it was like in India while Britain was ruling it from 1858 to 1947. This is the time of the British Empire when the UK controlled a lot of countries around the world. There used to be a saying, actually, the sun never sets on the British Empire. And that's because it was so big, it was always daytime somewhere in the empire. But not a lot of people were happy with this. Yes, exactly.
The article then says Gandhi was an Indian lawyer who became famous for promoting nonviolent protest against the British in India.
Right. Actually, the British government hated Gandhi because he was so fond of doing non-violent things, and it was difficult to make him look like a bad person. So we have this word promote here. When we promote something, we encourage people to do it, normally in an official way. So often we talk about governments promoting things. For example, the Taiwan government promotes foreigners studying in Taiwan because if you get good grades and you study in Taiwan, they can give you a little bit of money. And that encourages people to want to study in Taiwan. At the beginning of like a scholarship, exactly. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, many governments promoted washing your hands as well and staying home to prevent the spread of the disease. They were encouraging you to do these things even before the cases started getting to be more and more and you had to stay home. They were promoting it. So let's look at an example sentence before we move on. The city government promoted recycling by putting special bins on all the streets.
Promote 是动词，指的就是提倡或者是鼓励。那也就是说，可能大家说这个东西是好东西，是一个酷东西。那在课文里面呢，就是说甘地他之所以会开启了他的知名度，是因为他当初是到处在提倡这些非暴力的抗议。Non-violent 指的就是非暴力的。前面的这个 none 表示是一个东西的状态是没有的，没有暴力，那也就是非暴力的。那 protest 当名词的时候呢，指的就是抗议啊，像是静坐或者是示威游行等等，都可以算是一种 protest。那动词 protest 的时候，重音就会放在后面，它就变成动词。
Exactly. So the article goes on to tell us more about the history. It says the British did many terrible things to the native Indians. And I think actually that itself could be its own article. There are a lot of terrible things that happened in British India. It was not a nice place. We have this word native, which is important though. Native is an adjective that means you're from the place you're in now. So Nikki, you could say that you are native to Taiwan because you were born here and you grew up here, right?
Yes. And you're native to English?
Yes, I could say I'm native to the UK. We often talk about someone's native language as well, and that is the language they spoke since they were a baby, or even their native town, which is the town they grew up in. So here is an example sentence. Isaac moved to the US when he was 15 and never returned to his native Germany.
接着课文就告诉我们说，这些英国人在当时是对本地出生的印度人做了很多坏的事情。那 native 是形容词，意思就是说一个从小在某个地方长大的人。So I can say that I'm a native Taiwanese, also a native speaker of Mandarin, while Seb is a native English.
Well, yes, actually, that's a very good thing you brought up there, because native is a bit of a tricky word too, because it has different meanings. So, for example, Nikki, it's better for you to say that you are native to Taiwan, and that is because native can also mean something else. It can mean indigenous, 原住民. So often when we're talking about native Taiwanese, we might be talking about indigenous Taiwanese. And with this meaning, it means the people who were first in a place, before other people settled. So, for example, in the Yuanzhumin in North America are actually called Native Americans. So if you're from the US, you wouldn't say I'm Native American. You might say I'm native to the United States, although that's a little bit uncommon to say it that way. So remember, native can both mean Yuanzhumin and from a place.
And the article says one example was to stop Indians from producing their own salt. 那前面我们提到说英国人很坏， 那其中一件事情呢，就是他们不让印度人生产自己的盐巴。Stop somebody from doing something 指的就是阻止某个人去做一件事情，或者是不让他们做一件事情。
Exactly. The British wanted to take all the valuable things out of India and sell them for money. So they didn't want Indians to do things for themselves. They wanted to help them make money. Instead, the article says, they had to buy salt from the British, which included paying a lot of tax, right? So they wanted to sell all the Indians things, but they also wanted to make Indian people buy all the British things too. So we have this word instead. Now, instead means rather than. We use it when we want to say we didn't do one thing and we did another thing. For example, if I said, if I didn't come to record this lesson today and stayed in my bedroom playing video games, I could say, I didn't come to work today. Instead, I stayed at home and played video games. Here's a couple of examples of how we can use this word. I won't go to work today. Instead, I'll stay home and watch TV. Here's another one. Because of the weather, we can't go to the beach today. What shall we do instead? So here we're using it to ask a question. We're saying, what else can we do, or what should we do because we're not going to the beach?
那所以结果呢，就是说这些印度人反而要跟英国人买盐，而且这些盐巴的税是非常高的。Instead 是副词，意思就是说没有做前面提到的那件事，反而做了另一件事情。那通常两句话呢，前后两句话的态度会是相反的，可能是一正一反。那课文这里的意思就是说，明明他们自己是有能力可以生产盐巴的，却没有办法去做这件事情，要花更多的钱去跟英国人购买。那在这边我们看到了关系代名词 which， 这边指的就是跟英国人买盐巴这件事情。那前面有一个逗点，意思就是说是非限定，没有限定的，就是说这件事情是独一无二的，我们不需要特别去说明它是哪一件事情，因为只有这一件事情。
Exactly. It's just adding a little bit of information that gives the sentence more detail. We also saw this word tax, okay? And this is very important in the story of the salt. Tax is money that you pay to the government. There are lots of kinds of tax, and they can be a bit annoying, but we do have to all pay them. So, for example, there's the tax that you pay when you do work. You know, when you get money from a company, you have to give a bit of the money to the government. Companies have to pay their own tax too, and we call that corporate tax. And there's tax on specific products or goods, which is a bit of extra money you pay when you buy those things. So we have the salt tax in British India, and we also have taxes on things like cigarettes because the government wants you to not smoke, so they make cigarettes more expensive. Now, tax is very important because it helps the government do all of its work. That's the money that the government uses to, you know, pay for all of the things that you get for free from the government. So it's important that we pay our taxes. Here's an example sentence of tax. This country puts a high tax on alcohol, so it's very expensive.
Tax 指的就是税，那就像说我们买东西啊，他们都会课税，又或者是在台湾每年的5月，我们都要缴一个综合所得税。那课文这里呢，指的就是说这些印度人他们买盐巴所要缴的税。那例句说，这个国家的烟酒税非常高，所以酒是非常的贵。
Exactly. So Indian people were not very happy with this. And the article says, in 1930, Gandhi led a group of protesters in a non-violent protest. Okay, so what is this word protester? Well, basically a protester is someone who takes part in a protest, which is where you walk through the streets to show that you're angry or upset about something that is happening, normally something a government is doing. So he got all these people together and got them to show that they are all unhappy with the way the British were doing things.
那所以前面我们有提到的 protest 抗议，那这边的 protester 指的就是这些抗议的人，或者是参加抗议的人。So the article says they walked 385 kilometers to an area on the coast.
Yes, so they walked a very, very long way. I think that is even further than Taipei to Kaohsiung. So it's basically all of Taiwan, a very long way to be walking. There, they began making their own salt from seawater. Okay, so basically they were showing that they can go where they want and they can do what they want in their own country. The article finally says, soon people all across India began protesting too. Okay, so this really started a movement, a yundong, which is when everybody works together to make a big change. Now, we've got a lot more to talk about with Gandhi, but unfortunately, we're going to have to leave that for day 2. First, let's go to our For You chat question.
For You chat.
So today's For You chat question is, Seth, imagine that your country is being ruled by foreigners. How would you feel? Could there be any good things about it?
That is a very good question to ask me because I'm British and we ran a lot of other countries, but we recently we haven't had any foreign rulers. I think if it was like what happened in India, I would be very upset because in the UK we have our own culture and our own way of life. And if suddenly somebody came in and told us that was wrong or made us do things differently, and especially took all our money and made our lives more difficult, I don't know how I could see that as a good thing. I think I would be pretty upset with that happening. So yes, I think I would feel pretty bad. I think I would also want to take part in non-violent protests or find ways to change things.
But what about
I don't think
things?
that... Yeah, I personally... so I really like learning about history and I try to learn about the UK's past, the bad things that happen in the UK's past. I don't think that there's really any good things about having an empire. Some people say that, in empires like the British Empire, we built lots of trains in India, we built lots of train lines, but we didn't really use these to help Indian people. We did this to get more money.
That to make money.
Exactly. So it's not, we weren't thinking about the local people, and so I don't think it's a good thing. So my answer is there really aren't any good things about empire. Okay, I think we're going to have to leave things here, unfortunately, but you guys can continue this discussion, and tomorrow we will rejoin you to talk more about Gandhi and the changes he brought to India. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Risk. The brave girl risked her life to save her little brother from the burning building. Jail. The police stopped the drunk driver and put him in jail for the night. Promote. The government is trying to promote trade with a foreign country by opening an office there. Native. After a year in the big city, Sheila returned to her native village. Instead. I decided not to eat pizza for lunch. Instead, I had a sandwich. Tax. I like using the public library because my taxes already help to keep it open.
字汇小补帖
Protest.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是www.english4u.net www.english4u.net